Game over and game over.
You're gonna need a bigger potion. So simple.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to episode 648 for August 3rd, 2025, and I'm J.D. Duran.
And I'm Brennan Cassidy.
Hello, everybody. I do not want to sound the alarm, but it is the beginning of the end. This will be the last episode, ... of my 30s. It's the last of the 30s. I turned 40 later this week, and thus marks the beginning of the end.
I am going to
all
laugh
over.
if when we start the next episode, when you are officially 40, you throw your back out or something like that.
It would be pretty funny if I walked into that episode with a bad back, my knee, who knows, something else happened.
And I would simply say you jinxed it, man. You caused it yourself by just simply saying something.
I am officially old. At least later on this week, I'll be officially old.
I don't know. 40 doesn't seem that bad to me.
It seems pretty old to me. When you put the 4 next to the 0, it feels like life is about to end. It is a bit funny. We do look at it as...
Life is about to end.
Well,
we apologize to any of our 40-year-old listeners right now.
Obviously, I'm being facetious here. We live in a world, and this gets to my larger point.
Sure.
We live in a world where the average age is, 75 now? Around there? Around 75 years old?
That's a great question.
But here's the thing. I'm fairly certain it's around 75. It was barely 100 years ago. Let's call it 150 years to be conservative. The average lifespan was half that.
Especially
if you
for
lived
women,
to be
right?
50, you were lucky. And
Yeah.
like one out of 5 children survived. It was crazy.
The beauty of technology.
If we're looking at it from that perspective, 40 is pretty old. Like I made it to about what the lifespan was 150 years ago, which is like nothing in terms of time.
At the same time, I think most millennials would say 40 is nothing.
Yeah. But again, we have modern medicine, and most people, God willing, can make it to their 70s. If you're healthy, if you live a healthy lifestyle. I do find myself going to the doctors a lot more than I ever did in my prime, if you will.
Which means maybe you're catching stuff that allows you to live into your 90s.
I mean, that is the goal. So far,
That is the goal.
Clean bill of health, other than, the usual don't eat terribly, work out more, that sort of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from that, mostly a clean bill of health to this point. But I do go fairly regularly for those purposes. You get to this age and just there's something mentally that just clicks. You're like, I should go to the doctors more often. You never know.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss, but oftentimes it's not.
Especially you get older, you start thinking about things. And then you see things in the news like Deion Sanders, who is, for those not in the world of sports, he was this Hall of Fame NFL player. He now coaches at the college level for the Colorado Buffaloes.
Right.
He recently had a press conference where he went out and he stated, I just went through this cancer treatment and the cancer is gone. He was really grateful, but that came out of nowhere. He actually went in to screen for something completely different, and they found something irregular in his bladder, I believe it was, and it turned out to be cancer. But he went in for something that wasn't related to that at all. So he's just incredibly jarred that he had that experience and was grateful that they were able to find it because that he had no idea.
Yeah,
And that's
and
not why
what
he was at the doctor's to begin with.
wasn't it bladder
Crazy.
cancer?
Yeah.
Something related to his bladder? I
Bladder
think?
cancer.
Yeah.
But he was going in initially for something related to his toe. That's how he had to retire from the NFL because his feet were messed up.
Sure.
And so he's had lots of surgeries. And so he was doing a follow-up on his toe, and they found something else. It's scary. It's scary as you get older.
Human body's a weird place.
It is.
It's an alien planet.
I'm not anticipating anything anytime soon, but you go, get yourself checked out. That's all.
Absolutely.
You know.
You got to be on it. I mean, and the more you check on those things, the more you live a healthy, stressless lifestyle, the more likely you'll live into your 90s or so. As far as this weekend is concerned, I actually was helping move a 90-year-old man out of his apartment today. And this is a
There you
man
go.
that has a healthy lifestyle, which is why he's in his 90s. So it was, kind of fun to have a bit of a banter with someone that is of that age when you sit there and think, you don't really quite seem it. That's kind of neat to see sometimes. Yeah,
absolutely. I didn't mean to necessarily start this episode off on a dour note or a medical note. It just, I'm turning 40 later this week. Your world and your perspective of it begins to shift.
I mean, I'm 35 and I look in the mirror and I still see a 17-year-old. So what do I know?
Yeah, I don't feel that way anymore. Although I typically get that people usually guess that I look based off of how I look that I'm younger than I actually am. I do get that a lot, but nope, turning the big 40 later this week. So should be a lot of fun.
Well, happy early birthday. Of course, I'll say it to you on your actual day, but just so it's out in the public ether, I am saying it now.
No, I appreciate it. So yeah, this is my last episode in my 30s. We began the podcast before I had even turned 30, which is wild to think about.
When you're in your 20s, you're still a baby. You are absolutely still a child when you're in your 20s.
Yeah. It is pretty crazy. I was 28 when we started this whole thing. I was 28.
Which means I was probably 24 when I first joined.
Yeah. I can't even wrap my mind around that. That's just blows my mind.
This is exactly why I don't want to go back and listen to some of those episodes.
Yeah, for real. At any rate, this week's episode is going to be a lot of fun. With The Naked Gun out in theaters, we will, of course, have a review of that later on this week. But we are going to be talking about our favorite spoof movies. We'll get into that here shortly. To start off this week's episode, I want to do a little housekeeping up front. Last week we had some new VIP bonus content where Brennan and we talked about Happy Gilmore 2, one of the worst movies of the year. K-pop Demon Hunters, really like that movie a lot. My son Sam has now seen that film and is obsessed. He is wholly obsessed with K-pop Demon Hunters.
This is becoming a thing. This is going to be a major contender for best animated film at the Oscars, isn't it?
I think so. And I tell you what, that soundtrack, I don't know if it will have any sort of Oscar contention, but maybe some InSession Film contention because some of those songs are endlessly catchy.
I mean, if a song like Blame Canada from South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut can get nominated for best original song, then I think something from this movie probably
maybe. The soundtrack is really fantastic. It's a really good movie too, a really nice surprise. So really liked K-pop Demon Hunters. We also talked about The Amateur with Rami Malek, but maybe most notably, Brendan and I argued quite extensively about Ari Aster's new film, Eddington. I do wish that I had more time to prepare for that discussion. I had seen the film earlier in the day when we recorded that episode. So my thoughts on the film aren't as articulate as I wanted them to be looking back at it. My
Okay.
position on the film hasn't really shifted all that much,
Okay.
but I
was
do
curious
think
about
I
that.
could talk about it and offer up my perspective with maybe a little bit more cogency now than I did in that VIP bonus content. But
Mhm.
it's a film I'll continue to think about, and I do
Maybe,
want to hear Ari Aster talk about it. I haven't had the time yet to really seek out those interviews, but I do want to do that.
that could be a great opportunity for even more bonus content if you feel like you have more to say on the film and maybe a new perspective after you've had some time to marinate on it. And maybe I'll get a chance to see it again. Maybe my thoughts will change. Maybe I'll find myself liking it less as time goes on, or when I get a chance to see it again. Ari Aster tends to have those tendencies. I think
He
with
does.
every one of his films, I have liked less when I saw it again. I think the only one that I may have liked a little bit more the second go around was Beau is Afraid, which is a weird thing to say. But every other film he has made that I've seen more than once, Midsommar and Hereditary specifically, I did like them less on second go around. So
Interesting.
maybe Eddington will be another example of that.
Yeah, I just have a really hard time pinning him down. I do really like Midsommar. I have not really revisited the film since we first saw it. I have seen Hereditary a couple of times, and I think that movie is equal parts excellent and equal parts frustrating.
I'm
It's
with
such
you.
a
I'm so
weird,
with you.
bizarre experience. Beau is Afraid, I've only seen the one time, but man, I really loved and adored the ambition of that film. It does not all come together as a collective, but I do admire that film quite a lot.
The thing is, some filmmakers maybe work better when they're not trying to make movies, but they're trying to make ambitious statements. And I think that might be what Ari Aster is. And I think that's why Beau is Afraid is the movie of his that I did like a little bit more when I tried giving it a second go around, because I think he's a filmmaker that works best when he's trying to break the rules of narrative storytelling. And there are moments in movies like Midsommar and Hereditary where, as ambitious as they are, they're still trying to function as movies, right? They still are trying to have this, consistency, this beginning, middle, and end kind of structure. And I feel like that's where his movies tend to fail. But Beau is Afraid is not going for that at all. It's really just a series of strange events. It's a series of disconnected vignettes in a way. And I kind of think that works best for someone like him with that type of ambition. So I don't know. Maybe he's one of those guys.
Yeah, that very much could be true. On that same token, the disconnect of Beau is Afraid that I think works great is what I borderline loathe when it comes to Eddington. So I don't know. Like, again,
That's interesting. Yeah.
like
I think that's the biggest disparity we have there.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, we talk about that extensively in that VIP bonus content episode. If people want to go and give that a listen, again, that's at patreon.com/InSessionFilm. You can also sign up for Apple Podcast subscriptions or become a member on our YouTube channel if you're watching us here on YouTube.
Yep.
Either way, you get access to all of that VIP bonus content. You can hear Brendan and I argue for once. But
Doesn't happen often.
I do wonder if there is more to Eddington. However, there might not be. Simply, at least at this point, I think it would just be the same argument. I would just be more cogent with my argument.
Well,
but I
and
think
it's
it would be
fun-
the same conversation.
It's funny, even if I change my tune on the film, which I'm not sure if I will, I'm not sure if it's one I would have much energy to argue for that much. Even though I do think it is my favorite film Ari Aster has made yet, I will admit it is still not in my top 10 of the year so far. And it's not,
Okay.
it might not even end up in my top 20. Ari Aster, the only time he has made a film that ended up in my top 10 at the end of that specific year, it was Midsommar. And in retrospect, that has changed. Midsommar would not be in that top 10 that year, which was 2019, I think it was when that came out. I originally had it around number 10 or something like that. It falls way down now. I would definitely switch some things there. When I say way down, it's maybe somewhere in like the bottom 20-ish or something like that.
Okay.
But that's my way of saying, as much as I did enjoy Eddington quite a bit, you're not going to hear me talk about it much when it comes to our end of the year awards. I can pretty much predict that.
Yeah, I'd have to go back to look at my 2019 list to wrestle with that a little bit more, but I can say off the bat that it was number 20, funny enough, on my original list.
Interesting.
I don't know if it would change all that much. Maybe it would drop a few slots. I don't know. Again, I would have to really wrestle with that, but it's around that range for me.
I just
Around
remember very clearly struggling with that number 10 spot when we did that top 10 episode for 2019. And I was struggling between Midsommar and Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse as what was going to round out my top 10. And I ended up picking Midsommar, and that was a mistake. That absolutely was a mistake because The Lighthouse is clearly the better movie.
Yeah, I have The Lighthouse at 15. Again, on that original list, that very well could be different now. But simply looking at the list, just gazing upon it here, I don't know if that changes too much. 15 seems about right for me.
Okay.
As far as that year goes, but I think that's a really good year. Maybe an underrated year.
Yeah, because that was also
really talk about 2019 all that much, but man, this is a pretty stacked year.
Yeah, I don't have the list in front of me because that was the year of Little Women, right? And Uncut Gems.
Little Women, Parasite, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, for the Her Smell cult that I am the leader of. We got that film as well.
Hey, don't count me on that too. I'm part of that club as well.
Yeah. A Hidden Life, Ad Astra came out that year. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Irishman, Us, Pain and Glory. I mean, that was a freaking great year. It was really good.
That is a really good year. Yeah,
Uncut
you're right.
Gems,
We are underrating that year quite a bit.
Yeah, it doesn't get the flowers it deserves. That was a really solid year.
That year deserves
at the top. Yeah.
Flowers. That year deserves a garden just based on those films you listed.
Exactly. At any rate, 2019, fun year, might be worth revisiting that at another point. But anyway, all of that to say, we do have some bonus content. And I also want to shout out our latest patron, Paul Tristad, joining us on Patreon. We really do appreciate your support, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to get Paul on the show.
Yeah.
A lot of you might follow him on Twitter. He is all over the place on Twitter. He's a really, really great follow.
Absolutely.
And I did reach out to him some months ago to try to get him on the show. I think we are going to do that.
Okay.
I think we're going to get him on the show here fairly soon.
Yeah, I approve. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so working that out. But thanks, Paul, for your support. Really, really do appreciate that. We'll also note reviews this week. We will be talking about The Naked Gun, as I noted. And we're also going to be doing the little indie drama from A24, Sorry Baby. I don't know if you've got a chance to see this one, Brendan.
No, I have not. I have to see that pretty much a few hours before we're going to record that episode, unfortunately.
That will be a really, really fun conversation. I will simply note now, because obviously we'll talk about it during the review. Mm-hmm. I saw that film this morning at an 11 a.m. screening.
Okay.
And I love morning screenings. I wish that I did not have to work during the day so I could simply see movies in the morning all the time. It is the absolute best. I love it.
Oh, the joys of being a full-time film critic sometimes, right?
I know. Oh my goodness. That's fantastic. I mean, even if we were doing it full time, at least here in South Florida, all the press screenings are in the evenings anyway.
That's true.
So
yeah.
If I was going to all the press stuff, it would all be in the evening, regardless. So if I was doing it full time, I might just skip the press screenings and wait for those 11 a.m. showings at the AMC.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. There's something very soothing about that.
Oh man, it's fantastic. I did that last weekend as well. What was the other movie I saw? Oh, it was Eddington. I saw Eddington at like a 10:30 a.m. showing.
I did the same thing. I think I saw that at like 9:30, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Oh man,
like going to movies on a Sunday morning, that basically becomes our version of church.
Exactly. Yeah. It's me going to church. I love it. Yeah. Off to church, guys. See you later. See you in 2 hours.
This is how we pray.
Exactly. So I do look forward to those reviews. All right, let's go ahead and transition here before we get to our top 5 this week. I do want to have another conversation about the box office. Now, before you tune me out, before you skip ahead and roll your eyes, I do want to have a genuine good faith conversation about this. I know that people are tired of talking about the box office. The discourse around it on social media is a bit insufferable.
Tiring.
And
yeah.
I very much do empathize with that feeling. I do agree. The conversation about it on Twitter is not the best way to have that conversation. However, as empty as it is to engage with film in this way, I do think when you're having, again, a good faith conversation about this, and you're really digging into the psychological, emotional, and especially in 2025, the political nuances of what drives or doesn't drive audiences to the theaters, I do find that conversation compelling and perhaps even insightful. And I think it's worth having again right now, because there was a lot of talk over the weekend about the Fantastic Four, which had a pretty significant drop off. The Friday to Friday drop off was around 80%. That was the number that people were highlighting on Friday night. However, the overall weekend, according to the numbers that I'm looking at here, still not great. It was a 66% drop off from the weekend. It obviously tops the box office still because nothing was really competing with Fantastic Four. The Bad Guys 2 did 22 million. The Naked Gun, 17 million. That was 2 and 3 respectively. So Fantastic Four does win the weekend at $40 million, but a 66% drop off. And while the movie will do well, it will end up being Marvel's best of the year. It likely, the trajectory of it anyway, suggests that it's not going to top Superman. So Superman will end up topping the hero films at the box office this year.
Right.
Which, again, kind of circles back to, well, what is going on here? Is the genre at large in trouble? Is it just the MCU? The brand new DCU is just getting off the ground. Maybe you can forgive it for not overperforming when it's just getting out of the gate and trying to make up for the woes of its former DCEU. With Fantastic Four, and that being a significant property for Marvel, does the current box office climate, is it suggestive of the genre at large coming to an end, perhaps, as we saw with the Westerns in the 50s, 60s, and 70s? That eventually waned out. We still get Westerns, but it doesn't dominate the way that it once did. Is that where superhero films are going, or is just a byproduct of the MCU and the former DCU weighing on audiences enough that people are still waiting it out? What do you think?
I think it's a matter of timing more so than anything else. Timing being the release of Fantastic Four in such close proximity with Superman. Superman was always going to have more of an impact because it's new. It's the start of something new. There's something fresh about that. There is still that familiarity with Marvel, and sadly, as much as Marvel seems to be aware of the quality issues they've been facing and how they need to change direction, that narrative isn't really out there yet for the general public who might be feeling the same thing. In regards to Fantastic Four and how that's leading into such a big event with not even just Spider-Man Brand New Day next year, but Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, it's still hard to gauge when and how it's pushing towards that bigness, right? And I think that's ultimately why we're seeing this with a Fantastic Four, in conjunction with the fact that it was releasing in such close proximity to something like Superman that was always going to be a bigger hit regardless, right? I think it's more to do with that. And Superman seems to be doing fairly well. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now to confirm that. Maybe you do. But given the narrative around Superman, I don't think we can necessarily say that there's an issue with superhero movies per se.
Just before you move on there, I can confirm Superman was it currently is $551 million worldwide, which, and I believe I did see people pointing this out over the weekend as well. While $551 million is nothing to scoff at necessarily, that is less than all three of the Guardians movies. So
it is, and I think that's primarily.
And we're talking about Superman, the most iconic image when it comes to this genre.
We're talking about Superman. You're not wrong, but at the same time, there is, from what I understand, a bit of a disconnect with this specific Superman and how it's doing internationally. Much of what is going on here is domestic, which means if Superman is still doing well in the domestic market, we tend to look at these reactions in a more domestic market segmentation, right? We're not as plugged into the international conversation as much. That's
a great point. Again, just to let the math reiterate what you're saying, 316 of that is domestic comparatively to only 235 internationally.
Right.
And I don't know exactly what is causing that international disparity, if it's how people are, for the lack of a better term, boycotting anything that's the United States. Is it that? Or are people just not interested in a character like Superman, which has such an American ethos behind it? I don't know. I honestly, to your point, we're not plugged into the international scene as much. So anyone outside of the U.S. listening can perhaps give us some insight on that. And Superman is a highly charged movie politically, as we talked about in our review. Maybe that has something to do with it as well.
I think it might, because sometimes those political conversations around movies, I feel like they tend to rear their ugly heads even before those movies release internationally, and that could be baked into that culture and that narrative overseas. But I'm just speculating. I don't know for sure. But the fact is, if Superman is doing quite well in the domestic side of things, I don't think we can necessarily say that interest in superhero movies is waning, at least not yet. I think it's just a matter of clamoring for something that feels like it's pushing to a new direction and pushing the envelope a little bit, which, whether you like Superman or not, it is doing that, right? And there are elements of Fantastic Four that I think do that as well. Maybe not as successfully, but it is aware of trying to do new things. But I don't know if Marvel necessarily has proven themselves to make that narrative believed with the general public just yet. And maybe that's partially why we're seeing a bit of a drop with Fantastic Four.
Yeah, I think that is all really fair. Those are some great points. When it comes to where we are currently at with superhero movies, I have two main thoughts on this. Okay. One, I do think, and again, I saw several critics pointing this out over the weekend, most notably Sean Fennessy, was talking about how we're in a new era, that the serious fans are not going anywhere, but the casuals are checked out despite the word of mouth. I am about 95% there with Sean. I very much do agree with that. I think we are in a new era, and the math is starting to support that argument. And a lot of this, I think, comes down to how, and we've talked about this countless times before, but to reiterate the point, over the last decade and a half, studios oversaturating the market with that one genre in particular. How many superhero movies have we've seen over the years?
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about the general audience and their relationship to the studios. I think a lot of this is kind of silly, but you and I see 300 movies a year. And out of that crop, 120, 130 new movies.
Sure.
So 3 superhero movies a year, I'm sorry, not that big a deal to me. You could give me 10 superhero movies a year, and that's still a small percentage point of all the movies that I see, so it doesn't bother me one iota.
Yeah.
So this is not like what I'm about to argue here is not my relationship with the genre or with the studios, but generally the broader audience here. They do feel as if it's been oversaturated, and that most of what Hollywood is turning out is this particular one type of movie. And as a result, it has kept a certain segment of people that would normally go to the theaters. It has kept them from going. They've stayed home. Now you couple that with, okay, well, because we're only getting superhero movies, that means we're not getting the comedies that I love. We're not getting the romantic movies that I love. So I'm staying home. Streaming is prominent. I'd rather just see what's on Netflix. They have great documentaries. I can't go see a good documentary in the theaters, but they're all over Netflix and Amazon. Oh, look, I have this giant ass TV that I really love that is pretty cost effective. My sound, I can get a great sound bar or a great sound system it's pretty affordable these days. I kind of love that. And, you know, my couch is great. I'm very comfortable on my couch. I'm just going to watch media at home. All of those are factors.
I have to take a bathroom break so I can pause it and not miss anything.
Exactly. All of that.
I've decided that I actually want to watch this movie with closed captioning because I want to be able to capture everything. Not all movies offer that. So that
exactly. Too. There's nothing about this that is black and white. There are a lot of factors that play into why people are staying home.
Right.
But those modern home conveniences, you couple that with how the studios have trained people to go to the theaters and not simply based off of their preferences. And look, I like superhero movies, but I don't love them. And I feel like that's all Hollywood is churning out are these big blockbuster movies. We're not getting the things that I want. So my habits are changing. I'm no longer going to the theaters all that much. Maybe I'll go see a big one from time to time, but I'm not going to see Fantastic Four. I don't really care about Thunderbolts. Even Superman, you know what? In this politically charged time, I just don't care to go see Superman. Like, I feel like that's how the studios have trained the larger casual audience to be. And as a result, over time, especially when you also couple it with diminishing returns, which we've talked about a lot before, the DCEU, it never really got out of the gate, but their films got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. This
latest phase post Endgame got worse and worse and worse.
Yep.
And you know what? They're also giving me a lot of homework. I got to watch this show on Disney Plus to know what's going on in the next movie. No, thanks. I'm not doing that. So like there's just all these factors that are working against audiences that have led us to, again, to Sean's point that I agree with. I think we might be in a new era where audiences are now finally with their wallet voting against the studios and their constant churn out of these superhero movies. And while I love the genre, I deeply, deeply love the genre, I do think in the end this will be great for movies because it's going to bring back variety. Even this weekend with the success of The Naked Gun and last weekend, Happy Gilmore 2, what were the reports? Well, the studios all of a sudden are very interested in doing more broad comedies. Who would have thought? If you do, especially good ones, now Happy Gilmore I don't love, but you and I, Brendan, maybe we're in a minority. That film crushed on Netflix.
It did. It was a huge hit on Netflix, and even though The Naked Gun was number 3 at the domestic box office, if I'm not mistaken, it still did fairly well from a monetary standpoint, given what that film's budget was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and audiences were engaged with it. Maybe I'm more cynical because I think the success of Naked Gun might actually mean bad things for comedies, but that's a different conversation for another time. But I don't know. But at the same time, I see your point that I think there is a new era brewing. I think it mostly just comes down to how samey so many of these big blockbusters have seemed over the past few years, especially during the COVID era, right? I think that was a huge turning point for a lot of these movies. And the fact that Marvel was so successful at building to such an endpoint like Endgame, there was really nowhere to go but down after that.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
we joked about at the time. And
we did.
Wow,
we did.
Were we correct about that?
Yeah. The biggest success that you can give Marvel, or the biggest praise you can give them, rather, is just how well thought out that entire story arc was leading to Endgame, because no one has ever done that before. And they can't replicate that, unfortunately. I think audiences know that. So I do think we're in a new era in the sense that people are recognizing the laziness and the sameness of certain blockbuster films.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that superhero movies are out of the equation. I think they will make a comeback. I think it's just a matter of Marvel, DC, whoever is spearheading these movies can come up with a new creative way of telling them. I think Superman showcased that, and Marvel clearly needs to demonstrate that they're aware of that even more than they are so now and change course a little bit. Yeah. But I think that interest can come back. So the new era that we're in, I think, is just more of a recognition of what audiences truly want. But superhero movies can still have a place in that, I think.
Yeah. And last week, while we were talking about the Fantastic Four, does it shift things for Marvel? I might turn a little bit from my perspective on last week's discussion.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm starting to wonder if the Fantastic Four does absolutely nothing. And that might be best case scenario. I do wonder if anything, it's another entry into the MCU that just disinterests people more. And I think that's a little bit two-pronged. One of it is the film itself, while I loved it, I thought it was really great, but the reasons why I loved it are the exact same reasons a lot of other people are finding it boring and mundane. There's very little action in it. It's character driven. It's emotionally driven. You get the one big action set piece at the end. I love that. I love that approach. But if we're being perfectly honest, that's not going to work for everybody. And I think there's a world that we're living in where the general audience is probably going to see that film as boring. So that only disinterests them further from the MCU. And the other prong of that is, I don't know if Marvel has done enough in terms of marketing to make audiences understand that this is a pivot point. We're not doing as much the multiversal thing we were doing before with Kang, and a lot of why Marvel Phase 4 felt like it was aimless. They weren't exactly sure where they were going to go, and then they had to pivot halfway through because of the Jonathan Majors stuff. So now we have this other plan over here. I don't know if they have made that clear again to the wider audience.
Their marketing,
hardcore fans understand.
Their marketing should have been, sorry to cut you off, but their marketing should have been, they should have released a trailer that simply said what to watch before a Fantastic Four first steps, and someone just comes out and says nothing.
Nothing. Maybe that was the joke when they're saying watch the old Fantastic Four movies. Maybe that's what they.
But audiences might actually take that literally.
Exactly. I think they would take that literally, which is why, to your point, better marketing would to say literally watch nothing. This is a pivot point for us.
Yeah.
I don't think that Marvel, the MCU, Disney has done a great job of making things clear with audiences as to where things are going to go, which is why, to your point, Infinity War and Endgame ended up being this huge thing because they had a plan from the very beginning and they executed on that plan.
And everyone knew where it was going.
Everyone knew where it was going. So even though Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four have pivoted the MCU and we're now heading in a new direction that's going to lead to Secret Wars, you and I know that. People listening to the show know that. But do the casuals that add to these grosses, do they understand that? If I was to call my brother on the phone and bring him into this conversation, would he know?
Probably not. He probably
not.
wouldn't. Yeah, because to your point, a movie like Fantastic Four First Steps, while it is a bit less action heavy and more concerned with emotion and theme in some of those individual pockets, that might be a bit alienating to general audiences. Marvel has had very successful movies at the box office that are a bit more emotionally grounded. Look at a movie like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which might be a bad example because it is the third in an already successful trilogy, right? But there's action in that movie for sure, but that's kind of a heavy movie, right? So Marvel has had very successful movies that do take their stories more seriously and take time to focus on character. That movie, Guardians Volume 3, was what, like 850 million worldwide by the time it ended its run theatrically.
Yeah.
So like those types of movies can work for Marvel. It's just a matter of making sure the general public is aware of that. And I think that's missing here.
I do wonder though if Guardians 3 only works because those characters are mostly associated with what came before.
And what was
the
good
old
before,
era.
Right?
Absolutely. So people were already drawn to those characters, to the story surrounding them, and that drove its success. If it was something that was introduced in this new era and did that same formula that you just talked about, is it as successful?
Yeah,
probably not.
Yeah, probably not. That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
We're noting here. But I guess to your point, and I would argue with Thunderbolts as well, I'd be curious to know what its streaming numbers are. Are people finding it at home? Will people find Fantastic Four at home? Maybe that will garner some interest to the conversation we had last week as things pivot to Spider-Man and Avengers next year. Maybe that certainly could be the case. I do wonder. And I guess that leads to the next point I want to bring up here. I noted earlier with Sean Fennessy, we're in a new era. I said that I was 95% of the way there. The other 5% here, the reason I can't go full on 100% with that notion is Avengers Endgame.
Sure.
Avengers Endgame garnered, let's remember this, 2.7, let's call it $2.8 billion.
A 3-hour movie as well.
A 3-hour movie. 2.8 billion. Crazy. It almost did $1 billion on its own terms domestically, another 1.9 internationally. Now, obviously, there's a lot of factors that play into that. We just noted Marvel's Phase 1, 2, and 3 did a great job of preparing everyone for Infinity War. Infinity War is this huge success. So here comes Endgame, and it blows everything out of the water. It's this incredible cinematic achievement.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I bring that up is that next year, we are finally, for the first time since Endgame, we are getting a new Avengers movie.
Yeah.
And we're also getting Spider-Man Brand New Day, which began filming earlier last week. So here's my caveat, my last 5%. If those films come out and over exceed expectations and blow all of these numbers out of the water, and by these numbers, I mean Superman and Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four and everything that came out this year, if they over exceed and remind us that actually people aren't interested in those bigger titles, then maybe it's not quite the new era. We are maybe on the verge of it, but not quite there yet. If those films kill, then I think there's an appetite for more Avengers movies. There's an appetite for more Spider-Man, which will most likely give way to X-Men because we know they're coming. We talked about last week on the show. Whatever this new Marvel Phase 6 and 7 is going to be, it's going to be the X-Men era.
Yeah.
And those those characters, the stories that surround them traditionally have done fairly well. And you include them into the MCU, and I'm sure that will give fuel to the fire as far as Marvel is concerned. So I'm holding out a little bit here to see what Spider-Man Brand New Day does and what Avengers do. Because if Doomsday and Secret Wars also kill, I don't anticipate they'll do $2.8 billion well. But let's say both of those movies do $1 billion. Okay. Then it's not quite over yet. And then we have to kind of circle back on this conversation a little bit.
Deadpool and Wolverine was a big hit, right? So perhaps it's really more to do with the familiarity than anything else, because Marvel has lost so much goodwill over the years. Some of these new properties that they still want to get out there, they're not going to work until they reestablish their brand. And even though Fantastic Four has been adapted into film quite a few times already, it does feel like the first time we're getting it once again, that it feels like a new thing for Marvel. Same with Thunderbolts, right? Even though those characters have been included in previous movies in some way before, I think really Marvel's chance to get people interested again and rebuild that goodwill is to knock it out of the park with these final event films and then rejigger this whole thing with something that has worked before, such as the X-Men. And I think that's what they have to do.
And I think that's the plan. That is seemingly the plan here.
It is, yeah. This is their finish line. This is what they're working towards.
Absolutely. But again, on the flip side of that coin, if Brand New Day comes out and it doesn't exceed expectations, if Doomsday does good, not great, then I think to Sean's point, he's unequivocally 1,000% correct.
So and I said earlier, I think we're in a new era as well. I would agree with that, but more in a broader sense, just given not just superhero movies, but big blockbuster movies as well. I think they're, especially franchise movies, I do think that attention span is starting to change when it comes to general audiences. But Marvel tends to be the biggest target when it comes to pinpointing that issue, right? If movies like Avengers, Doomsday, Secret Wars, and Spider-Man don't hit as strongly as they need to, from a box office standpoint, then I will absolutely say, we're in a new era. And I don't think superhero movies are in this new era anymore. Because I said earlier, I still think superhero movies will have a place in this new era. It's just a matter of finding a way to let it adapt and feel reborn within this era and do some new things with it. But if those movies don't work and they don't succeed, then we might be at a bit of a standstill when it comes to super movies for quite some time.
Yeah, I think so as well. And that's why I'm going to be really curious to revisit this in a year. Once we get to Doomsday, we see how that does and if it changes the trajectory of where not just the MCU goes or even DCU, who is riding along here with Marvel.
Yeah.
It might change Disney and Warner Brothers, like at the very top, what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I think worst case scenario, because again, we're talking about numbers, and numbers are important to the conversation because it's what drives business. It's what drives decisions. The numbers are not what I find compelling here as much as it is the psychological, the emotional nuances of this conversation and how audiences are responding and ultimately giving Disney and Warner Brothers something to think about when it comes to those decisions that they're making.
Sure.
And in another year, if audiences hold their ground and they let Disney and Warner Brothers know we'd have no interest in any of this anymore. We want more Sinners of the world. We want more Barbies. We want more Oppenheimers. The Odyssey kills once again.
Be a really cool era that we're in.
It would be. I am wondering if the big Hollywood studios are going to have to re-navigate what the drawing board is going to be for them in terms of what they're churning out.
It's going to feel like the 2000s again. And then the 2010s was this whole superhero craze. the 2020s, the mid 2020s and onward for the next 10 years or so becomes this sort of resurgence of how blockbusters were made in the 2000s specifically, and then it swings back. The way that these eras tend to move when it comes to how blockbusters function and how successful that they are, there's kind of this pendulum effect sometimes, right? And it seems as though maybe the pendulum is swinging more towards these grander, more artistically minded blockbusters that actually challenge audiences, right? Maybe that's where we're going. That'd be a cool era to experience.
Well, and I was about to say my biggest fear in all of this, if Spider-Man kills next year and Doomsday just absolutely slaughters everything else that comes out next summer. If that is the case, my biggest fear moving forward is that Bob Iger will have absolutely zero interest in the Thunderbolts of the world. That would be disheartening. Look, I'm not against Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man. It is the character that got me into comics and into superhero movies and the TV show and even the comics themselves. So I love Spider-Man. I'm rooting for Brand New Day. But if because of the success in this scenario of Brand New Day and Doomsday, like I don't want those films to not do well, but I don't want it to come at the cost of not getting any more Thunderbolts, or we're going to completely re-edit Fantastic Four into something else, something completely different than the director's original vision because we need to have more action. We can't have it character focused. We got to dumb it down to the TikTok generation and keep things moving at a rapid pace. Like, I do not want to see that. Because to your point, it is the more artistic driven experiences that, like, even in the superhero genre, that's what I find fascinating. That is absolutely what I'm compelled by more than anything else. And I want to see more of that.
Not to, cite a completely different example that might be for a different conversation we might have later this week, but that's actually the thing that scares me the most about the potential success of something like The Naked Gun. Will it springboard and create this interest in broad comedies going forward? Or will we all of a sudden get these announcements that, oh, guess what? We're remaking Airplane. Oh, guess what? Now we're remaking Monty Python and the Holy Grail with a new cast for Monty Python. Will it be that? And I kind of feel like it would be, actually. I think that's more likely to happen.
And I do agree with that because The Naked Gun, it's really fun. I enjoyed it a lot. But we have seen the studios put out comedies over, let's say, even the last decade. Mm-hmm. Forget the COVID era. Yeah. Even before COVID, we were getting enough comedies out there. There was enough of a sample size to understand why the studios took a step back from them, because people were not going to see them. They were not. Like, that movie was like, there's a reason they were going to the Netflixes of the world, more so than anything else. And thank God for Netflix and Apple for keeping those kinds of movies alive. Same as the mid-budget adult drama as well. They kept that movie alive, but people aren't going to see them. And even with Happy Gilmore 2, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because it came out on Netflix. Is that film as successful if it goes to theaters? I
don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know. That's a good point.
We don't know. And The Naked Gun, like, that success is great, but is it successful because it's a really good spoof comedy, or is it because of the IP? Well, you and I certainly know what the studios are going to think. Well, we know what they're going to do.
That's why I think it's potentially dangerous. I see the narrative out there that we need The Naked Gun to succeed. We need this success is going to save broad comedies. And I'm like, is it? Maybe I'm too cynical. I don't think it will. I think the wrong message could be taken from that.
Well, and Happy Gilmore 2 was what? It is a sequel to a beloved comedy from the 90s. It's not as if it's an original comedy. I do not think at all we are going to get the original comedy back. We might get more comedies in theaters because of the success of those two movies, but I do think you're right. It won't be original comedies. They have over a decade worth of evidence to suggest that audiences do not go to the theaters for them. They don't.
Well,
they haven't.
I mean, The Naked Gun is not evidence of that. If it is a success, the evidence was with that movie Anyone But You, the Glenn Powell and Lee Sweeney movie. That was the evidence of potentially that type of movie coming back, right? The romantic comedy, not something like The Naked Gun. So I just worry that if that movie succeeds, Hollywood will take the wrong message, and I would not be surprised if they do.
Yeah, I would not be surprised by that as well. Because Anyone But You, sorry, I was trying to look this up as you were talking there, that did $220 million worldwide. So,
that's huge for a movie like that.
That's huge.
Yeah.
But that feels like a diamond in the rough. That doesn't feel like the norm. Again, when you look at
it also wasn't very good.
Previous decade leading to Anyone But You, most people do not go to the theaters to see those movies anymore. Again, when we're talking about the casuals that drive those kinds of numbers.
Yeah.
They just weren't. Anyone But You, though, is an interesting outlier there. And has it sparked a new interest from the studios to put those movies out? That film came out in 2023, and it doesn't feel like things have changed too much.
No, I'm not saying it changed anything, but I'm saying that if the narrative around a comedy coming out that's going to save broad comedies to be theatrically released, I don't think The Naked Gun is the movie to cite as the savior. I think that narrative we're talking about here should have been cited back when Anyone But You.
I agree. It should have.
Yeah.
But we know
it didn't.
that
It didn't happen. But that's
happen.
Yeah. But that's more of an example of where I can actually imagine. Okay, there is potential validity in that argument. Whether it comes true or not is beside the point. I just work. Yeah.
Well, and I guess to put a bow on that specifically, in another 2 years, we might look back at Happy Gilmore 2 and The Naked Gun with the same lens. They were fun at the time. People talked about there being more comedies, but nothing changed.
Nothing changed.
That could also happen.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. What we do know is that the superhero genre is not going anywhere anytime soon, but we might see things change sooner rather than later if this trajectory continues as far as middling results.
Sure.
And look, $551 million for a Superman movie is not the end of the world, but when you have an Avengers movie that makes almost $3 billion, that very much pales in comparison. And look, it's not fair to compare an Avengers movie to a Superman movie.
No, that was an event that everyone knew was going to be an event.
Exactly. But even when you look at something like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which did do better than Superman.
Yeah.
And generally there's a trend downward financially for all of these movies. It's a bit disheartening because I do think that artistically speaking, quality speaking, like in time, people won't care what the box office results were for these movies. We will look back at this era and talk about how Superman was a really great movie. It might be the best of the Superman movies. Thunderbolts was the best Marvel movie of that era. That will be the conversation. It won't be the box office results. But as far as the future of the MCU, the future of the DCU, the numbers do matter from a business perspective.
They do. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
The decisions that will come from the top. And I am a little bit worried that artistically speaking, there's going to be even more meddling moving forward.
And the wrong lessons will be learned as they always are.
As they always are.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
I am generally with Sean. I think we might be in a new era. I think audiences have been conditioned enough. The at-home viewing experience is really great. It's comfortable. We love it. The studios have made their bed.
Haven't I said this before that most franchises only have like a 10-year lifespan or something like that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of exactly what happened with Marvel, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Avengers Endgame was what, 2019? That was 11 years after Iron Man. That was an 11-year franchise. Harry Potter was a 10-year franchise. Star Wars in some ways kind of comes and goes between decades. So that kind of like each time you get a trilogy, it kind of feels like a 10-year experience in some way. So like I feel like these franchises can only function in 10s. You can't keep it going.
The Force Awakens came out in 2015. That is going to celebrate its 10th anniversary this year. So
that is so weird to say.
It's
that.
crazy. It's crazy to think about. And yes, there's been TV shows and lots of discussion about where Star Wars is going to go next. But the last trilogy, to your point, it started a decade ago.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a while since we've had a new trilogy of movies. And I don't anticipate, and we certainly haven't seen anything in the news that they're working on anything of recent. So
good. They can't announce anything because it most likely won't happen.
Yeah. We probably won't get another Star Wars movie. I mean, I guess we have the Mandalorian Grogu movie next year.
And it seems as though this Starfighter movie is officially happening. So
that's true. The Ryan Gosling film.
The Sean Levi film, which I love Ryan Gosling, but Sean Levi behind the camera kind of gives me some pause.
And I'm still waiting for, hey, we're on set. We're actually filming this.
Oh, I'm waiting
with Star Wars.
I'm waiting until I'm in the theater seeing it. Never mind a trailer. I need to be in the theater with the opening credits telling me that I'm about to see Starfighter.
In this day and age, when I joked about that with Avatar 2, I had no idea that we would be in an era where studios shelve movies that are wholly completed. I didn't know that was a thing that could possibly happen, but that's also the world we're living in.
I didn't know we were in an era where we're most likely to get a full 5-film arc for Avatar than we are a Star Wars movie nowadays.
Crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Like, I actually believe we're going to get Fire and Ash this year. I do believe it.
Yeah. And maybe that's why, and we talked about this a little bit last week, but I'm starting to buy the idea more and more after this weekend and the conversation we just had. When Kevin Feige was talking about doing on a full-on reboot or some sort of reboot with the MCU, maybe he was onto something there. Maybe the current era of the MCU should come to some sort of conclusion with Secret Wars. Maybe they should start over.
I think there's a reset button that they're building towards, whether it be the collision of all these universes into something singular and easier to follow. There's a rebranding that's going to happen. I wouldn't even be surprised if they start continuing this series. They don't even call them phases anymore. I think that whole methodology, that whole structure is going to shift. I really think they're building to something new.
Yeah, we shall see.
Yeah.
We shall see in the next year or so. I do think we're in a new era, but I want to wait to see what next year looks like. So we'll circle back to this conversation in another year's time. Before we get to the top 5, speaking of the MCU, we noted that they are shooting Brand New Day right now. They just started over the weekend. Did you have any thoughts on the reveal of the new Spider-Man suit? That little teaser from Sony?
Yeah, it looks like Spider-Man.
Okay.
Maybe I'm just a cynical. Maybe this is where I'm becoming an old man. Getting all worked up over a suit that still looks like Spider-Man, I think, is just exhausting. It looks like Spider-Man. It looks fine. It looks good.
Okay.
I don't care. Those are my thoughts.
Okay. So I actually have 2 genuine thoughts. One,
you are turning 40 years old, so I guess this is appropriate to get into this now.
Yeah, exactly. I got to maintain my youth somehow.
Yeah.
I think the suit looks great. It looks much better than any iteration we've seen with Tom Holland to this point. It is incredibly reminiscent of the Sam Raimi years, which I really love. So I think the suit aesthetically 10 times better than anything we've seen so far with Tom Holland. My only worry, and this is my other major sentiment here, is that it is only for marketing and that it'll mean nothing in the film because they're just going to CGI the hell out of it. If they're going to CGI the hell out of it, then there's no point in updating it. Just keep it the same. It's whatever. To your point, it can just be a whatever thing.
Yeah,
but I think it looks really great. I love the tangibility of it, but it means nothing if they're going to CGI it to hell.
Yeah, I'm more worried about other things around this movie outside of the suit. Wasn't it just announced that Mark Ruffalo will be returning as Hulk for it?
Yeah.
That worries me. That worries me quite a bit.
Yes and no. I mean, here's the thing. The Hulk has been a part of the Spider-Man street level hero through lines before. That is in the comics. So I don't remember him being a part of the Brand New Day storyline. I could be misremembering there, to be fair. But he has been alongside some of those stories before. So maybe they're mixing narratives, like comic narratives, as they always do in a lot of these movies. So I want to wait to see how it is. However, if they're only bringing in the Hulk to keep things more universal,
keep things tied to the universe. Yeah,
that's where I get concerned.
That's a different thing too. Like my worry is that it was going to turn into like another Thor Ragnarok level team up by the end, especially given the street level heroes like Daredevil and Punisher having a place in this New York City, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that
the
worries
film.
me. Yeah, that's the thing that worries me, especially if Hulk's going to play a part of that too.
Yeah, and that's fair. I will say I'm okay with it if they keep it to the street level aesthetic and approach. Because again, it's very much like the comics in that regard, and I love those stories in the comics, so that's fine. I just want it to be isolated to Earth, especially, but New York. I don't want this to get large. I don't want it to be big, like we've seen with Spider-Man in the MCU before. I just want it to be, an isolated thing.
That's what I want. Yeah, I would have been even happier if it was just Spider-Man, a villain, New York City. That's it.
I mean, that would be great.
Yeah,
but I don't
not
think
likely.
we're
It's
ever
not
gonna
likely
get
at
that.
all.
And look, with the MCU where it is, I understand why they don't want that to be the case.
Sure.
But if it's just those four, Daredevil, Punisher, Spider-Man, and Hulk, I can live with that. That feels like the MCU's version of being isolated. So I'm just going to have to live with that, I guess.
We're at a point now where 4 superheroes in a Marvel property, that's limited and isolating.
As we just saw 2 weekends ago.
Yeah.
The Fantastic Four. Okay, you had 4 heroes. It was all in New York.
Apparently that's the magic number, right? 4.
That's the magic number. So they're just putting together a new Fantastic Four. That's all. Okay. I can live with that. I just don't want it to become universal. I don't want it to be an alien. I don't want another Thanos in this. There's enough happening at the street level that you can keep it there.
I think there's enough interest there. There's enough interest there for sure.
Thought the suit looked great. All right, Brennan, let's talk about the best movie of the year. 28 years later.
Let's look at that. We agree. We actually agree on this. Easily my favorite movie of the year so far.
Oh my gosh. It is so good. This is a film that came out on digital last week. Yeah. And I have something very, very excited to share with you all. We have 5 digital copies to give away for this movie.
Heck yeah.
It is so good.
Can I have
one? No. We are not allowed to have one, as much as I would love for that to be the case.
I will gladly pay for it. I want to own this one.
I cannot wait to get the Blu-ray for this as well. But this is a film that came out on digital last week. If you have not seen this film, you need to go check it out. It has been divisive, so a recommendation may or may not mean anything, but we are huge fans of it. We did our top 5 of the year so far at the midway point a few weeks ago. This was number 1 for both Brendan and I. We are huge fans of this movie. I cannot wait to get to the end of the year, because I think this is a film that is easily going to be in my top 3 at the very least, no matter what, no matter how it shakes out.
This is some best of the decade level shit for me. It's getting there.
So good. Yeah. If this film falls outside of my top 3, we are looking at one of the best years for cinema.
I agree. I love this film that much.
Like it is really great. So how do you get your hands on one of these free digital copies? I'm so glad you asked, Brendan.
Do tell. Do tell.
You can follow us on social media at InSession Film on Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter.
It is.
On Instagram as well. Follow us there, and you will see a tweet from us later on in the week with instructions on how you can participate in this, and you'll have a chance to win a free digital code.
Absolutely.
So make sure you follow us at InSession Film, and you have to follow us because if you win, I need to be able to reach out to you.
That's important.
And I can only do that if you follow. If you don't follow, I have no way to get a hold of you. So
then it's your fault if you don't get it.
Give it to somebody else. So make sure you follow us at InSession Film. We pick these out at random. I put them all in a hat. I pick them out at random, and then I will DM you if you win a free digital code, and then I will send you the digital code. Yep. So make sure you follow us on social media. 28 years later, even if you don't win, go check out this movie. It is really, really fantastic. We really love it. And we thank 28 years later for their support. All right, Brennan, let's talk about music. Specifically,
my thing.
Let's get into Amazon Music, who has all the music in the world. They have all of them. Every song ever written and recorded.
from jazz to heavy metal to grunge to country to whatever it is. They've got 70 million songs and thousands of expert program playlists and stations, all at your convenience. All at your convenience, excuse me. Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to any song anywhere, anytime, on whatever device you have, whether it be your smartphone, tablet, your Fire TV, your PC. It's so convenient. It is perhaps among the better, if not the best, of those music streaming services out there, especially given certain other ones that I won't name that maybe don't treat their artists as well as they should, I'll simply say, and maybe their CEO invests their money in questionable things. I'll leave it at that. So at least Amazon has more of their heart in the right place.
Yeah, we've had some issues. I've had some issues with one of these streamers that shall not be named. And it's extremely frustrating. I'll say that. I guess I'll just leave it at that. But Amazon Music is certainly not one of those. They actually care about their listeners, and that's why the way they personalize recommendations for you is the best, because they care about your listening appetite, what you love, the habits that you have, and they will formulate the best recommendations for you. And as you noted, they have a bajillion songs, so you can make the perfect playlist for any dinner party that you're throwing, any event, graduation, birthday. I'm turning 40. Maybe you can make a playlist for me.
I'm sure there's a lot out there. Yeah. Just take the entire soundtrack from the movie This Is 40 and you've got it.
There you go.
I'm sure that exists there.
Yeah, I am the 40-year-old version. You remember that movie? That was a good movie.
That's a great movie. Yeah.
Great movie.
Some good music in that one too.
GetAmazon.com/InSessionFilm. That link again is GetAmazonMusic.com/InSessionFilm. The link is, of course, in the description below as well. Click on that, and you will get 90 days for free. Sign up, you will get 90 days for free. That is by far better than any of the other streamers.
That's incredible.
Amazon
what a deal.
has the best. GetAmazonMusic.com/InSessionFilm. 90 days for free. You won't regret it. It's fantastic. It is the best for music, and we thank Amazon Music for their support. Okay, let's go ahead and transition to our top 5 here, since we're running a little low on time.
Yeah, that first segment took quite a while, didn't it?
It did take a while, but had a lot of fun digging into all of those nuances.
Sure.
But let's talk about spoof movies. There's obviously been a ton of spoof movies over the years. Some really, really great ones. I'm curious to dig into this. Before we do, let's talk about criteria, a definition of a spoof movie. Brendan, what is a spoof movie?
So according to Google, and of course, just Googling spoof movie definition and to see what the Google AI overview comes up as. It says a spoof movie, also known as a parody movie, is a type of comedy film that humorously mimics and exaggerates the conventions of other film genres, specific films, or popular cultural phenomena. And I think that's a great definition because it actually does what I feel like does a great job tailoring into what our criteria is going to be and why we ultimately chose to do our top 5 favorite spoof movies. Originally, when you and I had this conversation, we kind of went into this thinking, is there really enough for us to talk about? And if we took the most literal definition of what qualified as a spoof movie, such as your Airplanes or your Naked Guns, everything that was spearheaded by, Zucker or the Wayans, and Monty Python, for instance, right? It does seem more limiting, right? But there is an opportunity to be a bit loose with what qualifies as a spoof, right? It doesn't just have to be a literal subcategorization, right? And if we can broaden this a little bit, there's a lot out there, a lot of great movies that maybe don't necessarily qualify as a spoof movie by category, but they are spoofing and exaggerating certain things, and they're functioning in a similar type of comedic irreverence. And that's ultimately where I think this definition is very important and what I think it's doing. And I think that's what's going to tailor, at least into my criterion, why we chose to do this. There are going to be some films we talk about here that many people might say, is that really a spoof movie? Are you just stretching the definition a little bit? But I do think all these movies we talk about here are still doing this thing. They're exaggerating the conventions of various film genres and tropes. They might not be exaggerating specific films all the time, but maybe certain movements, certain narrative devices, certain MacGuffins. And they all maybe have a very similar type of comedic backbone. I feel like that's really the essence of what we're getting at here.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly didn't look too much beyond that definition that you laid out there. I also didn't purposefully try to find something that might fall under that definition, but does things subtly speaking.
Sure.
I wanted, at least for the films I was considering here, I wanted it to be fairly obvious that they were spoofing either a type of film or a certain sect of movies, a particular franchise, whatever the case may be. I wanted it to be fairly obvious that they were subverting or commenting on, joking about the nucleus that they were taking for their spoof. I wanted it to be broad and obvious.
Yeah.
So I wasn't trying to be tricky with this because I think that, again, it borders maybe into a different conversation at that point. So I wanted spoof to be pretty much right on the money with the definition you laid out there. That was kind of my approach to this.
Yeah. It's just like some of these movies might not be the most obvious examples of what we cite as a spoof movie, but they still tap into that definition that we laid out there.
Yeah.
Because I think there are a lot of movies out there that very much do function as spoofs, but they might not be categorized as spoof movies, if that makes sense. And we might highlight a bunch of examples here that kind of fall into both spectrums.
Yeah, I will say, as this is less criteria and more so approach as well, I have 5 spoof movies here that are doing completely different things, tackling different genres, styles of movies. So I have a nice variety here that I'm very excited to
Same here. My top 5, which is a pretty loose top 5, if I might add there.
Sure.
It's something that could change depending on what my comedic sensibilities are on a given day. But these are the 5 that I feel most comfortable with right now, and they do they do offer a variety. I'm with you there.
Okay, well, let's get into this. What do you got at number 5?
My number 5 is one of 2. Is it 2? I got to double check this. Oh yeah, it's one of 2, 2-ish sequels that I have in my top 5. My number 2 is from the year 2014. I'm going to go with specifically 22 Jump Street for my number 5 pick. And I do love both of these movies, 21 and 22 Jump Street from Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the revitalization of the TV show 21 Jump Street, the titular name there. Yeah. But I'm specifically going with 22 Jump Street for a few reasons. One, I do like it more than 21 Jump Street. I think it's a very funny movie. I think it's much funnier than its predecessor, which is also a movie I really quite like. But I do think this movie, 22 Jump Street in particular, it's kind of one of those movies that's a bit more ahead of the curve than we really give it credit for. It kind of reminds me of something like, back when we were going through the Scream franchise, right, JD, when we were preparing for Scream 5 and even Scream 6, we revisited all those movies. And I think you and I might have a different appreciation of something like Scream 4, but we both recognize that that's a movie that was actually really ahead of the curve. That was a very predictive movie in some ways. In similar ways, I think 22 Jump Street is kind of predictive in the way that we treat sequelitis in movies these days. Like the whole meta component of how studios are so obsessed with sequelizing their properties. And this is a movie that's very directly addressing that. And there are many movies that have done that, but maybe they've done so in more serious ways, in ways that are a bit more as commentary, something to be a bit more insightful, if that makes sense. Something like The Matrix Resurrections, for instance. But 22 Jump Street and the way it plays with the jokiness of those sequel tropes, I think is kind of predictive. The way it makes fun of how they destroy all these things, but they comment on how it's actually going to blow their budget with the police force. Like little things like that. It's actually very on point with the way studios treat sequels and franchises. And I think this is a very smart movie for those reasons, on top of just being very funny. So because of that predictive nature, I wanted to give this film a slight edge. It is, in my opinion, one of the better comedies of the 2010s. I think it's a very effective movie in the way it treats sequels for those reasons.
I think what's brilliant about 22 Jump Street is that it almost feels like it's a spoof of itself. Where 21 Jump Street was a really fun comedy, 22 feels like it's a spoof of 21 Jump Street.
It's commenting on its own existence. You're absolutely right. And it's hard to pull that off sometimes.
It is really hard to pull that off, let alone the broader tropes that it's also subverting. And it's great. It's really, really funny. I enjoy that one a lot. That's a really great honorable mention. I absolutely love that one. Number 5 for me, I'm going to the musical spoof here.
Okay.
There are obviously some really great contenders for this particular slot, but I'm going with Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping. And this might seem a little maybe a little modern or a little biased to my to the world that we're living in now. And that absolutely very much is the case. Honestly, that's a big reason why I ended up going with it here. I adore This Is Spinal Tap. I love what that mockumentary is going for, but there is something about the era of social media pop stardom that we live in now. Celebrity, narcissism, corporate synergy, and how this film satirically subverts all of that I find incredible. And like simply as a mockumentary, the way the film approaches those ideas here, I think is hysterical, really, really funny. And also the music is just endlessly catchy.
It's catchy.
Like, I love the music to this documentary or this mockumentary as well. So it has genuinely really fun music. The performances are a riot. And I think it absolutely nails this era of social media pop star isms that defines so much of real world culture, and how that social media stardom, it drives so much of the culture that we see even now. I mean, this film came out in 2015, 16, 17, somewhere around there. Yeah. But it very much plays today. If anything, I like what it heightens in that film only makes the commentary more prescient where things are going today. And it feels like so much of today's culture is heading toward, like unironically heading toward the world of Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping. Like things are so crazy and chaotic right now. And you have people doing things that Connor for Real does that in that film is so over the top and absurd, and that's just how people are behaving in real life now, in terms of celebrity branding and messaging and the crazy things he gets into. But again, that just speaks to the brilliance of the film.
Yeah.
And I love it. And again, like there are so many great musical spoof movies, not just This Is Spinal Tap. I thought of that because of the whole mockumentary angle to Popstar, but Walk
Sure.
Hard is another one of those movies that I thought about heavily for this slot. At the time, I thought it was a really fun spoof movie, but as things have progressed and the musical biopic has only gotten more trite and derivative, Walk Hard is another one of those that just continues to resonate as we get more genuine biopics. So I thought about it heavily, but I don't know. There's something about the creative energy, the vibrancy of Popstar, its performances, and especially the music. I still listen to that soundtrack pretty often. And
Well,
it's great. I love it.
well, for all of those reasons, it's exactly why Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, is my number 4.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm with
Okay.
you. I wanted to have something musical, a music spoof movie represented in my list in some way. My first thought was to go to This Is Spinal Tap because it was arguably the first, or certainly the most iconic. And there's a lot about that movie, especially with its rock and roll culture and that backdrop, that I can relate to. Like the whole fact that there's a whole segment about how their drummers all died. Like that was kind of a common epidemic when it came to rock bands back in the 70s and 80s.
It's pretty wild. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I love all of that as well. You're right. I almost went with it because of its iconic status, and maybe it's blasphemous, but I grew up more in an era where celebrity culture has defined culture more so than what I can relate with in This Is Spinal Tap, if that makes sense. And there's something about celebrity culture and how I feel about it personally that it didn't really talk about in my little monologue there a moment ago. But I guess to be fully transparent, I do not care at all about celebrity culture. It is not my thing at all.
Sure.
I find it incredibly superficial. It's just not a thing for me. If other people love it, if celebrity culture is your thing, good for you. I'm glad that you like it. I do not like it. So like the way that Popstar makes fun of it is something that I do relate with. And again, I think it's even more prescient in 2025 than it was when it came out.
It is a bit predictive, and that's why Popstar is another great honorable mention of mine alongside This Is Spinal Tap. But the reason why I give the edge to Walk Hard for me, it is exactly what you said. It's the fact that we have gotten so many music biopics since then that just can't learn the right lessons. They just can't.
They can't.
It's almost it's almost like they're fully unaware that Walk Hard was making fun of those tropes, or that they're even unaware that that movie ever even existed. I mean, clearly that's a movie that's in response to James Mangold's Walk the Line, the biopic on Johnny Cash. It's very much formulated off of that specific blueprint, which in and of itself kind of became the music biopic blueprint for the 2000s, right? For the 21st century, to tiring effects for many people. It's to the point now that you look back at Walk Hard, it doesn't even feel like a comedy anymore. It feels like a music biopic. It feels like a genuine music biopic, just given how many movies have come since then that failed to learn the right lessons on how to be a bit more creative with that genre. And it just goes to show how predictive and ahead of the curve a movie like that was in really dissecting what is wrong with a particular artistic medium. Because we've talked about this many times. You and I and many critics out there, we don't like to see the Wikipedia style storytelling when it comes to music biopics specifically. And while Wikipedia itself can be very insightful, it can give you a lot of facts and stuff that you might not be aware of. Just giving us that information is not interesting. It doesn't need to flow like that outline. And I love that Walk Hard is very directly commenting on that. And it's made its critical commentary even more even more topical nowadays with the success of movies like Bohemian Rhapsody, right?
Yeah.
Which in and of
Oh my
itself is
gosh, yeah.
basically a mockery and no one really realizes it. So there's something about Walk Hard and just the predictive nature of what it was calling attention to that has only weirdly gotten worse that makes that movie better. And that's why it's my number 4.
No, I completely agree. I mean, as far as Walk Hard and Popstar go, they're pretty much on an even playing field. If I was simply focusing on film alone, then I probably would have went with Walk Hard. I agree with you. I think it holds up tremendously well. The music biopic continues to fall into the exact same traps every single time, and it just makes Walk Hard all the more genius as time goes on. So yeah, I do love it. With Popstar, I was just looking outside of film itself,
Sure.
again, including culture as a whole, which was the tiebreaker for me in the end. But Walk Hard,
Yeah.
I'm right, like heavy honorable mention for me. I absolutely adore that film. Yeah, that's a great pick. My number 4, I'm going to the historical drama, the middle age film, that era of movie specifically, with the iconic Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I don't know what needs to be said about this movie. I think we all know why it's great, why its absurdist logic is hysterical, its subversions, its sketch comedy structure is just remarkable. We've all seen this movie probably a gazillion times at this point. There are
Never too many.
How many one-liners can someone name from this film? I mean, there are endless. There are endless quotes to come out of Monty Python.
I quote it every day. What, the curtains?
Yeah. I mean,
It's blue, but not too blue.
bring out your dead. It's just a flesh wound.
I feel happy.
There are so many quotable moments in this film. It's so funny. I love the sound design, how we see that on screen at times. The music of the film. It's just great. So many iconic moments here. I don't really need to go into it. You all know. But
yeah.
It's my number 4 here.
It's my number 2. I'll just reveal that right now. And I knew I wanted to have something here that held this iconic status as being one of the first true spoof movies. And I was going back and forth between this and Blazing Saddles, which came out only a year separated from each other. Blazing Saddles was 1974 and Monty Python the Holy Grail was 1975. But even then, Monty Python as a sketch comedy show in England existed before that. So that brand of comedy was around even before Mel Brooks became really well known here with some of his biggest hits. So that was one thing I considered. And while I will say I think Blazing Saddles is maybe a more thoughtful and insightful spoof movie that also has a sociopolitical edge and a commentary to it that's even timely nowadays, I think the reason why I gave even more of an edge to something like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, why it's so high for me, it really is the type of comedy, that absurdist, irreverent type of comedy that has sort of become the blueprint of what a spoof movie is categorized as. So just that blueprint, that brand of comedy, that's what I wanted to highlight. On top of the fact that it is just very funny. It's not going to work for everyone, I'm sure, but it always made me laugh. It's something I saw back when I was a kid in middle school. It made me laugh then and still makes me laugh now. And I feel like
it holds up gloriously. It's still very, very funny. Yeah.
But I think it's that type of comedy, that irreverent type of comedy that we tend to associate spoof movies with, that I think more so originated here with Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is why I wanted to give it some of an edge. Yeah,
and like the greatest comedies, the greatest spoof comedies in particular, it's not just those iconic one-liners that we were just talking about, but it's also the brilliant sight gags of the film. How many visuals alone, you look at the visual and you just start falling out of your chair.
I'll never look at coconuts the same way.
Exactly. That's one of the best examples, right?
Yeah.
Just absolutely incredible.
Are you
like that is
coconuts migrate?
Just an incredible use of a prop. It's fan-freaking-tastic, and it makes you laugh. Like, you just have to look at a still image of it, but you see it in your mind. You know how it's played, and it's just so remarkable.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, you could. It's one of those great movies you could also watch with the sound off and also have a ball, like have a riot, just with how it looks visually. And that's the great thing about the medium. It takes advantage of it being a film. It is the sound, it is the visuals, it's the performances, it's the costumes, it's the violence. it's all of it, which is why it's brilliant. I absolutely adore it.
It's so good. It's so good. Like I said, my number 2.
Okay. Number 3 then. What do you got number 3?
So number 3, I wanted to have my horror gothic kind of pick here.
Okay. This is also my horror slot as well.
All right. I don't think we're going to have the same pick here. I think we'll have a bit of a variety. I have a guess as to what your pick is going to be.
Yeah, mine won't be a surprise.
Yeah, my number 3 is from the year 1993. It's also a sequel. I'm going to Addams Family Values for my number 3.
Okay.
And I've talked about this movie before a few times. I think this is perhaps one of the best sequel improvements I've ever seen for any movie, considering that first Addams Family I don't think is very good at all. But I think this second one is finally the thing that taps into what made the Addams Family as a property such a successful spoof, as it is a satirizing of the ideal American family in a very gothic, macabre kind of way. But Addams Family Values is finally the movie that really emphasized the fact that they still live in the modern world and how they mix with the modern world and how that just does not work and how weirdly grotesque that they are. And it is also a very funny movie. It is perhaps my favorite Halloween-themed comedy. My wife and I watch it every Halloween together, and we laugh our butts off every single time. I actually think it's very underrated as far as 90s comedies are concerned. But I think as it might function more as a satire than it does a spoof, but the comedic stylings of it are so spoof-like that I think it still qualifies because it is an exaggeration of certain trends. It just might not necessarily be movie trends. It's really more about lifestyle trends, and it creates a spoof around that idea. So I think it definitely still qualifies here. But like I said, I think one of the more underrated comedies of the 90s. I think it's very, very funny and very underrated.
All right. I can't speak to it. I haven't seen it. That is a blind spot for me.
Have you seen the first one? The first Addams Family?
Yeah, years ago. Years and years and years ago.
If you ever want to put yourself through this exercise by watching these two movies back to back, I would love to hear your thoughts on watching The Addams Family and then its sequel, Addams Family Values, and see if you share my opinion that the disparity in quality between the two is almost gargantuan.
Yeah. Okay. It's something that I'll have to, I'll have to give it a go.
Put it this way. On Letterboxd, I gave that first one a 1 out of 5. That second one that second one, as far as comedies, I'd probably go as far as in saying a 4.5 out of 5. Like, I think it's that different. I think it's that much better.
Okay. Well, remind me, I'll try to put it into the calendar every January when we get done with our InSession Film Awards. And that's coming off the heels of months of homework and watching 20-25 movies or new releases, getting ready for the award show, doing the award show, editing the award show. There's a lot that goes into it. I love doing the InSession Film Awards, but there's a lot. So January, once we get done with the award show, I'm ready to just chill out and
watch something
relax.
That's not work.
Exactly. So that will be the perfect time to revisit those movies.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'll do that mid-January. I'll try to remember to do that. Okay, number 3 for me, this is going to be no surprise, but this is where I have Scream. And the reason this film will always resonate with me is because of my relationship with the slasher genre. A lot of you out there listening love slashers, and I love that for you. I have a pretty volatile relationship with the slasher genre. I've noted this many times on the show, but for any new listeners, I generally do not like slashers. I found
Mhm.
most of them to be hollow and trite, awfully derivative, and uninteresting. I don't feel like there's anything of value outside of having an iconic villain in many of them, especially the sequels of slashers. The originals tend to offer something of merit. You know, you look at something like that first Psycho movie, for example, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The original films are iconic and for good reason, and I tend to love all of those movies.
Right.
But typically what follows is
Schlock.
vacuous schlock. Yeah, exactly. I tend to not really like many of them. So for a long time, it was a genre I avoided because I haven't liked them. And then here comes Scream. And honestly, Scream itself, ironically, perhaps, I avoided for a long time because of that same volatility. But then I gave Scream a go and was incredibly jarred by that movie. I loved it. I thought it was really great. And it was great because it spoke to everything that I found frustrating with that genre. And I was like, oh my God, yes, here's a movie tackling the very issues that I have with those movies and doing it in a clever, fun, humorous, and interesting way that continued in at least some of its own sequels. I think ironically, as that franchise went along, it started to stumble, avoiding the same pitfalls that it was tackling in those early movies. But generally, it's a franchise that I do really like a lot. And that first film, I think, is great for many reasons. But
the best one.
Yeah, it is the best one. And it will always hold a special place for me because of how it tackles something that I found vividly very frustrating with that sect of horror. So I love it. It is my number 3 here.
Yeah, it's no surprise that the horror genre has been maybe the biggest playground for spoof movies, right? There are many great spoof movies that fall into the horror category that we can consider here. Scream is a great one because it was spoofing a particular subgenre of horror that just wasn't working anymore. And it also simultaneously revitalized it by participating in that subgenre and succeeding in that. It kind of works in a similar way as something like Shaun of the Dead, the first of the Cornetto trilogy from Edgar Wright, which kind of plays with the tropes of the zombie movie, but then becomes a very successful zombie movie by the third act. It kind of works in a similar way in some way, but I do think Scream is maybe the one that has the most bite to its commentary, and ultimately why it does stick out and why it is such a great film as far as horror is concerned.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Good stuff there. Your number 2, you already noted earlier.
I did, so we can go to your number 2 then.
My number 2 is Tropic Thunder. It is the action slot. This is my action slot.
It's a good pick. That's a good pick.
And also, again, genre type aside, I think this is just simply one of the best spoof movies. This film is brilliant. In many regards, it is absolutely hysterical. The way it comments on and subverts the big bombastic action movie is nothing short of genius. And perhaps what is most brilliant about it, ironically, is the Robert Downey Jr. of it all. It is insane that this film got away with what it did, but it is because of that satire why it works and why it's effective and why people still meme it today. Yep. Robert Downey Jr. as this character in this movie is something that is talked about, brought up about in culture often today. Some of the most viral tweets you'll see all year round have to do with this character in some way, shape, or form.
Didn't he win a Golden Globe for this performance? I know he was nominated for an Oscar for it.
Which crazy, which is absolutely wild.
He was nominated for playing the dude disguised as another dude. Or I should
It's
say,
the
actually,
best.
better, the dude playing the dude disguised as
Yeah.
another dude. I forgot a third dude in
Yeah.
there.
Playing an actor, playing a character, pretending to be someone else. It is utterly ridiculous. But
Yeah.
that's what makes it great, right? Is because it's commenting on the serious actor that will go to these extremes for a role, which is why him going to blackface, it works in the context of that film. It is
Sure.
going to an extreme and making fun of something that is often ridiculed within Hollywood circles. And I love that mockery. It is absolutely brilliant. And the fact that he was nominated for it is just puts it the cherry on top. It's so incredible. I do wonder if that film came out today, what the reaction would be. Could you imagine?
I think part of the joke is that it came out at the right time. I
Yeah,
think
very much
we as
did.
critics would still be able to latch on what it's trying to say. I think that would still that would still go over fairly well from our perspective, but I'm not sure if audiences would really get it because it might in that sense it may have come too late. But that came out at the right time where I feel like everyone was ready to embrace that type of edge, that type of comedic bite.
Absolutely, absolutely. But even beyond the Downey Jr. of it all of the characters and the type, like the trope they may be tapping into, or a type of character within the action film, especially, it's all really great. It's very astute filmmaking. It's brilliant comedy, and I love the little jokes and gags along the way. Everything is just so perfectly put together with that film. I love it. And
Yeah.
it has an ending that just incredible. Like the
Well-
way that whole film crystallizes is impact. It's just
Yeah.
so good.
It's a good honorable mention for me. There's one thing about the movie I'm not in love with, but it's more of a subjective thing. I've never really been sold on Ben Stiller as an actor, if I'm being honest, unless he's doing more dramatic work. Like, I love him in the Meyerowitz stories. I actually really like him in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I think that's a very
Yeah.
underappreciated
Yeah.
performance. But I never really loved him as a comedic presence. I actually think he's a much better director than he is a comedian on screen. And where I think his work is most successful in Tropic Thunder is as a director. I love his direction for that movie. And we also have to give him a lot of credit for his creation of something like Severance, which is a really effective TV show. But I do think he is the weak link of the cast for me. I think everyone else around him is much stronger.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. He's a much better director than he is a performer. I have always felt that way about Ben Stiller, even before we knew him to be this really great director. I've never really loved him as a performer.
Yeah.
But I do think this, and maybe it just speaks to his vision as a director and the way this film is written and the brilliance of how everything has a very specific purpose within the tropes that it's mocking. But I feel like his performance stands out in this film amongst his other work. Like, I very much prefer him here to many of his other roles.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if he's not, he still might be the weakest element of the cast. Again, I'm not disagreeing with that, but I think it's one of his stronger performances, which again, I think circles more back to Ben Stiller, the director and writer.
I think there's definitely more of a passion and an interest in this material, which is what's fusing a better performance out of him here when compared to, let's say, something like Zoolander, which honestly, that's a movie that just never worked for me.
Yeah, I didn't like that much.
And I'm not a big fan of Meet the Parents, if I'm being honest, but that's just more of the situational comedy of that film is just something that I find very agitating. That's just not a me movie whatsoever. There are some things that Ben Stiller did as an actor in the 90s that I didn't dislike. I really enjoy Reality Bites, the movie he did with Winona Ryder and Ethan Hawke. I thought he was pretty effective in that. And of course, there's something about Mary I think he's also very good at. I think he's very good at playing these types of wimpy kind of roles sometimes, but he doesn't always do that. He tries to add a confidence and a bravado to some of these performances, these comedic performances that I don't think always works. But I think in Tropic Thunder, it it does for the most part that I can't really say it's bad, even though I do think everyone else around him is still absolutely succeeding more so than he is. Even Jack Black at times is kind of the unsung hero of that movie at times, even
Oh
though he
my
gets
gosh, he's
severely
great. No, I
underutilized
agree.
at times. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm not at all excuse me. I'm not at all discounting that he's the weakest element of the cast, but I think comparatively to a lot of his other comedic roles of that time, I think it's
better.
Easily
It's better.
one of his stronger performances.
It's better for sure. Yeah, I don't disagree
Absolutely.
with that.
But again, he's tapping into a comfortability as a performer with a lot of those roles that, again, I just don't love. I do think with this film, and I think it circles back to his overall vision, that passion that you were noting, that he is able to elevate himself a little bit, which is why I don't think it's at all a distraction. I think he's perfectly fine. He fits in with everything else that's going on here, and why I love the film. If he gave a Zoolander type of effort performatively,
this movie falls apart. This movie tanks.
Yes, I think it does. But I don't think it's that at all. Like, it's not the Royal Tenenbaums. Don't get me wrong. He's not operating on that
That's a
level.
great performance. Yeah, that might be his best performance.
That's a genuinely great.
Yeah,
easily one of his best. Maybe his best.
Between that and the Meyerowitz stories, probably his two best performances.
Yeah. And this is post that. I don't know if that has any sort of play as to him tapping into some sort of different level. I don't know, because obviously he did a bunch of other bad comedies or mediocre comedies that I don't really love. However, I do think he's able to elevate himself here a little bit. That I do
certainly more so. I don't disagree with that.
And everything else again is just so sublime that I deeply love the movie, and I think it's extremely effective as a spoof. So
yeah, I think it's fair.
It's my number 2 here.
Yeah, it's a good movie, quite a good movie.
Absolutely. Okay. With that said, now that we've gotten the action war movie out of the way, what do you have at your number 1?
Well, I did say I was going to add some variety to my list, but my number 1 is kind of similar to 22 Jump Street in that it is a cop action themed spoof, and appropriately so, my number 1 is The Naked Gun from The Files of Police Squad.
Okay.
And quite simply, it's my number 1 because I think it's the first one I ever saw. So it's one that I'm always going to have a very nostalgic relationship towards. It's just as simple as that. It's the one that makes me laugh the most. But there is something about this movie that I think demonstrates the artfulness of these spoof movies, as immature and unserious as they are. It proves, this movie specifically, I think, proves that they're not easy to make. And sometimes the best way to achieve this type of stupid, irreverent comedy, it's to play it straight. Play it as straight as possible, which this movie does by casting the great Leslie Nielsen as Frank Drebin, who, for the most part of his career, kind of started like Liam Neeson as a serious actor. If I'm not mistaken, it wasn't until something like Airplane in 1980 that really popularized just how funny he can be, because he is so serious and deadpan. And his work on the television show Police Squad that only lasted for 6 episodes, that then spearheaded this movie in 1988, that seriousness, that deadpan quality is why this movie is so funny. And I think in a way it's sort of formulated my comedic funny bone and what I find funny in movies. I think in many ways this is the blueprint of what Brendan finds funny in movies. And that's why it just had to be my number 1. It's really a subjective pick, but I think if I'm looking at it just beyond that subjectivity, I think this is a movie that does best demonstrate how tricky it is to make these movies work, that there is still an artfulness in trying to craft that type of stupid comedy. Just because it's stupid doesn't mean it's easy. And I think this is a great example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing my picks here based on the variety more so than any sort of numerical order. So if I was going to remove that completely and just go by type of film or genre, this would be my pick also for the cop genre.
Gotcha.
So I guess you can include that amongst my list here. We're just doing a top 5, obviously, so it's a great honorable mention, but you might as well include it because it would be my pick for for the cop genre for all those reasons. It's really great. I wish that I had time to watch it before going to see the new Naked Gun. Would have been great to have that in the back of my mind. I haven't not seen this film in years, but I love it for all those same reasons. And yeah, it's a great reminder that as silly and obtuse as these films could be, when done well, it's nothing short of brilliant. And again, similar to Monty Python and really a lot of these films that we've been talking about, that's another one of those where the visuals are doing a lot of the heavy lifting as well.
Absolutely.
And I love how the film is able to do all of that.
That's the thing. Like these movies, like The Naked Gun specifically, because of how they treat their sight gags in the background, kind of a blink and miss it mentality, you kind of have to say these movies are well shot, right?
They are. Yeah. And the new one does a lot of that as well, which I was trying to pay attention to that. And there are some great subtle ones along the way, such as, again, not to get too much into it, but you see him put a glove on one hand and then he uses the other
hand. I love
which is great. Or the cold case room that you see there in the office was a great little sight gag that they don't ever acknowledge in the film, but you just see it.
The doors that say police squad, but the word squad is not backwards, but police is.
Yeah, it's great. Like, I love that. And obviously it's taking the blueprint from that first Naked Gun, which is just incredible. So yeah. I'm with you. I love that as well. It's a great honorable mention for me, and again would be my pick for the cop genre.
Yeah. And I also will say The Naked Gun, that first one from 1988, probably my favorite comedic sports scene I've ever seen in a movie. The whole umpire undercover scene at the baseball game. Yeah. Great stuff.
Good stuff. Love it. Absolutely love it. I don't know if I need to spend a lot of time here with my number one. Either the GOAT of this type of movie will always be Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
And I think his best work, and he's done some great work, but I think will always be Blazing Saddles. So again, going to the Western, I have now gone to the Western genre here. Blazing Saddles is my number one. Again, for all the reasons that you already know, the way that it subverts the classic Western mythology, the way it tackles the white savior trope, small town morality, the way it breaks the fourth wall is fantastic, especially when you get to the end of the film.
Yeah.
And how it turns Hollywood into this artifice is just fantastic. A lot to love with this film. The performances, again, the sight gags even of this movie, the music, like so much, like everything that is going on in this film is just perfect. It is an impeccable movie, and one of those spoof movies that, like, it's like the way that it is mocking certain things in this film, like it holds a lot of weight even today.
Yeah,
it holds a lot of weight. So it's not just that it's making fun of certain things, it's doing it in a way that has genuine thematic bite to it that I love. And not all of these movies are going for that, for sure, but that is just the brilliance of Mel Brooks, and I think why I give Blazing Saddles a little bit of an edge comparatively to the rest of them. Why it's my number one.
It's
here.
the wittiest. I think it's definitely the wittiest. It's the one I would say is probably his quote unquote best movie. Maybe between that and The Producers might be his best movie. And it is maybe like my number 6 or 7 if I were to extend this out into a top 10. At the same time, I also really love Young Frankenstein. That might be the one I revisit the most. That's maybe the most rewatchable of his comedies for me. But I will say I do think Blazing Saddles is the more insightful of the two.
For sure.
So it definitely has an edge in that regard.
Yeah, I do think Blazing Saddles is his best work. And again, it's the combination of it working as an incisive spoof satire on its own while having a little bit of that underbelly. And I also think it's very, very rewatchable.
Sure.
And again, if we're going to, well, I guess Young Frankenstein sort of falls into the horror thing. So
It does, yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't quite trump Scream for me in that regard, but I love that movie as well. Again, if I'm disregarding genre, it's a heavy honorable mention for sure.
It's a very different vibe to Young Frankenstein when you compare to not just the wittiness of Blazing Saddles, but kind of the anger of Blazing Saddles. There's a real deep-rooted cynicism in that movie. And Young Frankenstein has a little bit of that, but it's also kind of a more tender movie. There's a sweetness to that movie by comparison, which really does a great job demonstrating just how versatile Mel Brooks was. And I think in many ways, those two movies from Mel Brooks kind of represent the yin and yang of how successful he was as a spoof director.
Yeah, I just love how Blazing Saddles is completely fearless in its irreverence. Like, it's a film that wants to be controversial.
Yeah.
And perhaps still is, given the culture that we're living in
Oh,
today.
there are jokes in that movie I will never say out loud.
Nope, not at all. But I love that the film is willing to go there and is willing to have this brazen conversation. It's quite brilliant, and I love that about it. Like, I love its confidence. It's a very, very confident movie. So yeah, I dig it.
I agree.
Blazing Saddles, my number one.
I agree. So, great stuff.
What other honorable mentions do you have here? I'm sure there are dozens we could also mention here.
There are many, for sure. I will admit, there was a movie I did have in my top 5 for a little while, but at the last minute, I took it out because I don't think I really can consider it a spoof movie. It's one of the Cornetto films from Edgar Wright. My favorite in that trilogy is actually The World's End from 2013. And for a while, I did have that in my top 5, but I'm not sure if that really is a spoof movie. I feel like there's more going on there as a psychological drama utilizing a certain genre trope as a backbone for that. If anything, those movies are playing with tropes to do different things. I don't necessarily see them as spoofing genre tropes as much. So I at least wanted to highlight that those films do exist and we are aware of them, and many people would qualify them as spoof movies. But my favorite of the three, The World's End, which I guess might be a bit of a hot take given the reception of the first two films in that trilogy, that last one I don't really think is much of a spoof. So I disregarded it, but I at least wanted to acknowledge that I do think it is a very good movie, and I wanted to highlight it a little bit here.
I love all three of those movies. I think they're really great. I heavily thought of Shaun of the Dead. That is my favorite of the Cornetto trilogy, but Shaun of the Dead was never going to trump Scream as far as the horror pick for me. Same thing with Hot Fuzz. Like, Hot Fuzz probably would have never have trumped Naked Gun as far as the police pick for me, but I love all three of those movies. And I think even with At World's End, that is a film that might in a way fall into the same camp a little bit of Blazing Saddles, because I think aesthetically speaking and comedically, it is a film that does tap into the definition of how we're looking at spoof here. I think it does get quite silly and absurd, but like Blazing Saddles, it has this underbelly that it does take seriously. And
it does.
I do like that psychological edge, but I think it is a yin of the yang in terms of its kind of absurdist approach to the whole sci-fi of it all.
That movie, The World's End specifically, does seem more interested in its main character's personal trauma than anything else, which is why I think some of the spoofy elements of it almost get buried underneath that.
Yeah, and that's fair, yeah.
Like, I would say, even though I like it more than Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, those two movies are spoofier by comparison. They are definitely the spoofiest between the three. But I do love The World's End. I wanted to at least highlight it here, that it is an honorable mention of mine and was at one point in my top 5. I do also have Blazing Saddles, kind of a tie between that and Young Frankenstein, if I'm being honest. This is Spinal Tap I had pretty high, just missing out on my top 5. I'm actually a big fan of Galaxy Quest as well. I think that's a very, very funny movie that kind of predates the interest in comic conventions as we see it today. I think there's some pretty predictive elements of that movie as well. Of course, Airplane is a classic example. That's a very funny movie. One I wanted to at least highlight here is Todd Haynes's May December, which kind of functions as a bit of a spoof of the Lifetime movie formula in a way. I mean, when you have a line like "we don't have enough hot dogs," you know the movie is not really taking itself that seriously. Exactly, with that music cue. It is a knowingly silly movie that
it's very melodramatic.
That melodrama does give it a spoofiness in a way. Many people might not cite it as a spoof movie, but I think it does kind of qualify. So I at least wanted to highlight that here as a potential honorable mention for me, because I think it's a very out-of-the-box pick. But I do think it is very good. Whether it be a spoof movie, whether it just be as a movie, I think it's doing some interesting things. I'll stop there just for the sake of time, but those are some high-level honorable mentions for me.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a lot of mine on here as well. I will also note, unless you mentioned it and it missed me, but Austin Powers, I think, is a lot of fun. Wanted to at least give that a shot here.
Yeah, I didn't mention it here. Those movies have kind of soured for me as I've gotten older.
I only like the first one.
I only like the second one.
There you go. How funny. Okay, there you go. So that's Austin Powers.
Then again, I also love Heather Graham, and I think that romance in the second movie is much better. So perhaps it's she was an early crush for me, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Gotcha. Well, I'll at least mention Austin Powers there. It was never going to crack a top 5 for me, but I do think it's really fun. Deadpool, that first Deadpool.
Okay.
Really, the first 2 Deadpools. I don't love Deadpool and Wolverine all that much, but the first 2 I think are really fun, obviously very, very spoofy.
Sure.
With the superhero genre. I know people are tired of Taika Waititi, but I really do love What We Do in the Shadows. I think that is a brilliant mockumentary.
I agree.
Absolutely love that one a lot. And I believe you mentioned the rest of mine. I don't think I really have anything else here. Starship Troopers, I guess we could mention that one. I don't think you mentioned that one earlier.
I thought about that, but I did kind of wonder if that qualifies more as satire than it does spoof. And I was trying to be careful not to pick movies that felt more like satires than they did spoofs.
And I agree, because that is a different topic altogether, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. And I felt like that's a movie that fell more into that other category.
Very fair. The rest of mine you mentioned here, so I don't really have anything else to add there.
I'm looking at this list just quickly. I do want to highlight Wet Hot American Summer, a very good movie that kind of spoofs on the summer camp subgenre of comedies and coming of age movies. Does a great job doing so.
If you agree or disagree with our list, you can leave a comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit us up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can always email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. All right, we are going to wind down here. Again, we will have reviews for Sorry Baby and The Naked Gun coming this week. I know the Neon horror film Together also got a bit of a wide release, but we wanted to prioritize Sorry Baby as it's began making the rounds. And people have claimed this to be one of the better films of the year. Yeah. And before it left theaters, we at least wanted to make sure we got a chance to see it.
Yeah. And it works out nicely if we're going to do Together next weekend, because we have another big horror movie coming out that same weekend. So it allows us to do a bit of a horror theme when it comes to reviews next week, because we have both Together and then we have the new movie Weapons to tie it with.
Yeah, exactly. So I really look forward to that. Have a little bit of a horror weekend next weekend. So we'll do Sorry Baby, The Naked Gun. There will be a new Women in Session at the end of the week as well, so you can be on the lookout for all of that. With that said, the last final thought that I'll have here, Brennan, as it is August, I know we're getting ready for our 1999 retrospective at the end of the month. So people can be on the lookout for that. Make sure you're doing your 1999 homework. You know what other movie that I've been watching a lot recently? It's called Michigan versus Ohio State 2023. It's a great movie. I've watched it so many times. Great ending. And it never gets old. You know?
How many times now?
At least 4. My wife is like, you got to watch something else.
You got to stop. I'm sick of hearing that in the background.
Exactly. Okay, I'll do Michigan versus Washington in the national championship game. That's a movie I also love.
Pretty
one of the best.
She's gonna get sick of the big house, man.
I know. I have to get ready for football season. We're close.
It's coming up.
We're so close.
It's coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. With that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the InSession Film Podcast.